Mama, can you hear me?
Copy that. Copy that. When David
Papa,
came.
can you?
Hey, when David came, he said, "Oh, it's like I feel like we're in a helicopter," and I'm like, "No, we don't do helicopters." You know, there's this singer-songwriter, Citizen Cope, who came out with an album, and the title is "Heroin and Helicopters." So they asked him,
All right.
"Why did you come up with this title?" And he said, "Well, some very wise music executive told me once, if you want to make it in rock and roll, there's
Yes.
two things you have to avoid. It's like heroin and helicopter."
Heroin and helicopters.
Is this
That's
my
true.
photo up?
It is your
Oh, are
photo. Hold
you?
on. I'm trying to find my camera in here. It's hidden. But I think, well, hold on.
You have no idea how many
Ta-da.
hidden cameras we have.
Yeah,
Here goes the
you know,
DP.
I
Look,
know,
can't
ta-da.
stop.
Now smiles. Oopsla. I have to go with the portrait function, and then it natural light. Okay, all right. Well,
See
anyway.
the DP. He's like wherever,
And
even
now
in the
I have to
podcast
find
studio.
IMDb Pro, and I can do that too. Look, whoa.
We found it already. Oh, you want to look me up? I actually have a credit on IMDb. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I have a credit as executive in charge of music.
I have to put myself up, and if I just put in my first name, I'm already there.
Okay,
There's not that many Ulis with an E,
I know.
and I'm the number one.
Of course you are.
Uli number one.
Pull that mic a little bit more in front of you
Yeah.
with the arm.
Yes, and you
It's
don't
just
have
like a
you don't
camera
have
arm.
you don't have the spit shield. So we can do a little bit like that, and I can see you better.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah,
so-
right. I like that
Right.
too. Okay, let's do this way.
Yeah. Oh.
So how did you
yeah, I
get
can see
here?
you now.
With your Vespa?
Of course, with my Vespa.
I love it.
I don't do anything else. And Thomas is driving my car because
Oh,
you
the
know,
other
that
car
old-
broke.
yeah. So yeah, he decided to put on a new transmission for $3,000 in a car that's worth $4,000
Oh,
and
Why?
21 years old. You ask him.
okay. Let's just drop that right
Let's
there.
drop that right there. I was going to buy a new one.
Yeah, maybe we have to work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you driving around in the Vespa, like enjoying your recent official retirement?
I mean, it's not an official
I
retirement.
know, but you're talking about it all
Oh
the
yeah,
time.
I cannot not talk about it. I'm on Medicare. What
love
else can I
it.
say? I'm an old,
I hope I'm
old
going to
fart.
be on Medicare
I'm going,
soon too.
You know, this socialist country, America, is going to insure me for free to the end of my days. I forgot about that. I didn't know that. People don't know that. That, you know, this is the only country.
But only after
That has
retirement, because
after
before
65.
retirement you're fucked.
Well, yeah, you have to pay for health insurance.
And
You're not
they
fucked.
don't
You have to
c-
pay for health
Yeah,
insurance.
but they don't cover shit.
Well, it depends what you pay for your health insurance. Of course, you know, I mean, you have to pay for health insurance anywhere. But anyway, it's extraordinary, and
Yeah.
people never talk about it. That is actually the most social thing.
Yeah,
I know it's better than national health in London,
yeah.
in England, is
Yeah.
actually, you know, Social Security and Medicare.
Okay.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
So, but if you would have, like, if somebody would come to you and they would have an awesome project, you would come out of your retirement, or what kind
Yeah. Already, I'm out of my retirement. I already have a project.
You do?
in the area.
What
Yes.
is it?
With a
Can
good
we
friend.
talk about it?
We can talk about
Is
it.
it- is
It's,
it
you know, Andrea Sixt, who is an old friend
Right?
and a writer, and I've done 2 movies she wrote, and
In Germany.
In Germany, she's a German movie
And you're going to do it?
writer. Well, Bavaria asked her to write a screenplay. She wrote it, and then now they offered her to direct it, and it's her first time
Her
she
debut.
directs. And of course, I supported her. I said, "You really should do it. It's great. Yes, you can do it. No, you can do it. Yes, great. You know."
But with you
And so
on
I
her
get a phone call.
side.
So now I get a phone call from Bavaria, and have to. So I went to Munich and met the producer, and so I guess I took that job.
Wow, I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Well, it's only happening next year, thank God.
Yeah.
You know, this year I don't really want to do anything.
Well, maybe you'll
Though I
change
have
your
another
mind.
screenplay I should read. And,
What is that? An American one?
that's actually a Dutch Argentinian
Oh my God.
thing about Vincent van Gogh. It's actually about
Another one
Joanna,
about him?
about Vincent's Theo's, his brother's wife. She is actually responsible that we know Vincent van Gogh, that not all his paintings were burned after his life. She kept it and she started to sell it. She was an extraordinary art lover,
Curator.
and she became the first female gallerist, basically. In a world where women had nothing to do with art. Well, they did a lot of art, but all the men put the feathers in their hat.
And was her name also Van Gogh?
Yeah, she was married to Theo, to the brother.
Because I was just in Amsterdam in December, and we visited this house, that is an old Grachten house, and it's like a museum. And this family was also big art collectors, and they were the founders of Amsterdam. It was so interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a screenplay I'm just reading right now.
So you're considering that?
But I don't know. I mean, it's an Argentinian production. I don't know not enough about it. I'm halfway through the script. It's very long. And I mean, it's a very interesting story, actually.
But you've shot movies in Argentina, no? Didn't you do with Eugenio Zanetti?
Yes, I did.
Amapola or what?
Amapola, it was called. Very nice film.
With Camila Bell, who's going to eat lasagna at your house tomorrow. That I've already seen in the fridge.
Yes, I'm prepped.
Yeah. And you've also shot movies in Brazil, like pretty much all over the world.
Yes.
But what's your favorite place to produce? Is an American production the most organized or most like professional in a way, Hollywood?
Not really. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm lucky that I could work on sort of the last wave of real Hollywood movies, which is really great. I mean, there's nothing better than to shoot in Los Angeles with a crew that is the crews are the most professional crews in the world, or they were, but now that no movies are shot in Los Angeles any longer, hardly, that changed. They basically, they dissolved their own industry. Now it's all television.
Well, the entire industry is like completely disrupted because of the streaming services and the TV and all of that. And the big studios, are just doing franchises and stuff, right?
It has changed, but I mean, it hasn't changed that much. It's just what have changed is that producers now go where they get money, where they're bribed to go. And these bribes didn't exist until 15 years ago, or not that much.
So you mean like tax rebates?
Tax rebates are bribes to the producers to go there. So the big studio, it would be, if you have a picture that costs you $100 million and you get the producer or the studio gets $30 million out of taxpayers' money back into their own pocket after the film is done. If I were a producer, I would go somewhere as well where they get the money, even if, you don't have the good crews or, you have to shoot, you have to shoot San Francisco somewhere in the middle of the woods,
And you can bring your people because that's what the tax rebate is all about, to hire the locals, right?
Yeah. So the really good crew is not more expensive, the LA crew, including traveler, but the producer doesn't get the 32% of their salary into their own pocket. So they don't really want to hire the good people from Los Angeles. They rather have like somebody who is local, who was a hairdresser that has a salon, and a grip that, was a plumber yesterday.
So what do all the good people, the good crew, do then? The ones left behind in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean the crews either you get out of the business or you move. Right. You move to Atlanta, you move wherever, you become peripatetic and just move where the jobs are. It's really terrible. And
or you move remotely somewhere where the cost of living is better, and then you travel to your location, like Gary Kemp did, right?
Yeah, no. But they don't feed you. You don't get per diem when you go somewhere if you work as a local.
Okay.
So, anyway, it's
so let's talk about the golden days. It's much more juicy, right?
Yeah, no, and I mean it just has changed. You're right,
Yeah.
you know, and television has changed. I mean, there's television, and then there are the streaming services, the Netflixes, and the now as well the Apples and the Amazon Primes and so on,
Yeah.
and the Hulus,
Hulus.
and yeah.
Yeah.
They're one thing they didn't used to exist. I mean, of course, HBO was the first one, and
Yeah.
also on Showtime were the first one
Yeah.
that did a big series, and now you know a lot of the storytelling
And they have to
films
create
are
so much content
television.
because there's so much times
Yeah.
to fill.
It's actually interesting. I don't know. I have given up in keeping up with what's
Yeah.
out. I honestly just watch movies. I don't ever hardly
Really?
watch TV series because, I mean, what can you do? I need to watch a lot of films. I watch nearly every movie that's coming out because of in the academy I get them all, and you have to So I see a lot of movies on the screen. And I just don't have time to watch.
I mean, you have
and
to
I
live
don't
3
as well. I don't
lifetimes
want to
to
spend
see that
another
all.
like $50 for the 5 different screening
Yeah,
screening services. I mean, I have to have. Of course, I have Netflix and I have Amazon Prime. That's the only ones.
Me
But
too.
I don't do Hulu. I don't do.
No.
I don't even.
You
do
have to draw
HBO.
the line somewhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah.
But
Somehow.
so, talking about TV, so you kind of started in TV, right? Back in Switzerland when you.
Not really. I mean, I started in my very, very first job as a cable boy on a live show. Yes,
In television.
In television, yeah. That was during while I was at university, my sort of a side job.
So, what were you studying in university there?
I studied English language and literature.
Okay.
Linguistics and history of art.
Wow.
Yes.
But did you take the job because you wanted to move into like the
I always
film?
wanted to get into the movies. I didn't
did?
know how to. Yeah. I started with 12 with my friend Walter. We started to do, experimental 8mm films with my dad's wind-up Bolex.
Okay. How did that go?
Oh, they went great.
What was the movie about that you did?
Oh, different ones. One was called Chinese Lanterns, because I had a little 8mm animated short, which had the title Chinese Lanterns. So there was the title sequence. And then, we edited and everything. And
did you write the stories like yourself?
I mean, Chinese Lanterns, I don't remember, but we did another film which was very elaborate. We even recorded sound and everything.
And you were 12?
No, by then we were about 16. That was already like, ooh.
Wow.
That was a real thing with actors and everything.
Wow.
Sets and smoke. We
Effects.
did smoke, and we made the titles inside the camera because you can rewind the film, and it was very elaborate.
Wow! So you figured it all out.
Yeah.
And what did you do with those films? Did you show them
they
to
actually,
friends?
3 of them still exist. The sound, I don't know, because we parallel did it on a 4-track Sony reel-to-reel recorder, which I bought after working a summer long for the post office,
to afford it.
To afford it, yeah.
See,
so
it
we
takes
did,
a lot of
then
dedication.
we had the old 8mm Bolex projector from my father, who had a speed control, so we could when we projected the film, I could adjust the speed so it was semi in sync.
Oh.
It was very, very fancy. Yeah.
So were they shown to people, these films?
No,
or?
just to friends.
Just to friends.
We did some screenings where people had to pay basically a bazooka chewing gum to get in like that. No, but my friend Walter, then he went to film school, to the Vienna Film School. I didn't dare to really to apply because I thought I would anyway not get in. But we did a film for him for his and he got in. And and so
you did a student film with him while he was in film school? Or?
We were just after we did graduated from gymnasium, lycée, high school basically. Yeah, he's 19, 20. Yeah, and then
But you
I
eventually
decided to
went
go.
to film school too.
I did.
But how did that
only
go?
after I
How did that happen?
that happened because I started to do in the semester holidays. I actually got because of this TV job.
Right, the
Where
cable
by the
job.
way, the cable boy job.
Yeah.
Where I actually realized that I'll never want to end up in television.
Right.
I learned a lot on that actually on many levels. It was actually really good to
Like
do these
as
side
an
jobs.
observer, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, well, it was quite intense. I mean, you really rehearse for a week, and then you do this live variety show, live. It was very interesting as well, seeing all those artists and all the playback and the way how it works and how.
What years was that?
That was out in 1977, I think. Or
So where do
76.
you say live variety show? What kind of show is it? Like The
It was-
Price
it-
is Hot or something?
No, it was actually it was Teleboy.
Okay.
Remember Teleboy with
No.
Kurt Felix?
Oh, I know him because
And
he
his
was
wife.
hidden camera, and they were supposed
yeah.
to be funny, but they were the most
Yeah, some of them are-
non-humorous
yeah.
people on the planet.
Some actually were quite funny, and they,
Okay.
you can still find them on YouTube. But anyway, that was it,
Oh.
And then I did some other TV shows, live TV shows, as well. But it was really interesting, and I made money. I could
Yeah.
actually then buy myself a Polaroid camera with that and things like that. So it was really good.
But why did
really
you
liked
think?
that.
Why did you think you wouldn't get in film school, and your friend Walter?
Well, at the
would get
beginning,
in?
because it was like it was a difficult
Process?
Well, the tests were really difficult, and
Yeah.
I sort of thought I was just not ready to, not competitive enough. I seem, and then, I just decided to go to university and study English language.
How many years did you go to university? That was in Zurich, right?
4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
But then I didn't actually finish. I didn't graduate. I did my what today is a BA, but I didn't finish my MA. I didn't write the Lizenziats, the thesis. That's the only thing I didn't do. I did everything else. But I was working during semester holidays. I was working got a job on a first movie. And then this production company gave me another job next year. And it was really great. I mean, that's where I learned a lot, because these were really big movies, big European movies, co-productions, and I, for the first time, saw professionals working. And I hung out a lot.
Did that boost your confidence to
Well,
kind of apply
the
for
first
the
time you
film
really see, what an agra looks like. Well, like you see all these gadgets that you never see because they're professional gadgets. I mean,
Right.
like a sound recorder and the camera, of course, and the lights, the cable boxes, the trucks. It was very interesting, and I hung out with the electricians a lot, and I realized really how creative the crew is.
Yeah.
I mean, the gaffer who would like hollow out the candle and build some little thing in it so the candle would look as if the light would come from there. I mean, like, it was just really, really enticing to me. And then on the second one, the assistant director actually, he told me, you should go to film school, and it came really from him. And I had to go to England anyway for my studies, for my English studies as an the year abroad. So I actually did that, and finally
You took his advice.
took his advice and finally dared to go and get the forms to apply for film school, literally like that.
To
It was like,
pull together
took
all
me a
your
while.
courage.
Yeah, it took me a while.
And it was not as hard, this kind of process in the
It was once I did it,
UK.
I did it. It was the London Film School,
Yeah.
and it ended up okay, and I got a grant from the city of Zurich to do that.
Wow.
So I ended up leaving. It was one of my happiest moments to dangle the keys of the English seminar and hand them back. I was very involved. I'd learned. The university time was a great time
Yeah.
because it's this freedom.
Free and
Yeah. I learned a lot about politics, internal student politics. I was in student politics very early on. I was one of the young in the großen Studentenrat. I was
the
like in
council.
student in the council
Political council.
already in the first semester, and helping organizing the big parties of the university and stuff. And through that, I know how to undermine or go in, figure out the administration and get. I mean, it was politically very interesting how to cheat and to get like. To be able to use the big aula as as a dance hall. I mean, things like that. It was really, really actually great.
But also, you kind of, because of the literature, you were very interested in storytelling too.
Well, yeah, it was that was always sort of part of, I guess, and not that I.
Not only
really
the technical aspect of
yes
of making a movie.
Yeah.
But what you said when you learned from all these electricians, it's how he did the candle and all of that. I find also, because a lot of people dismiss, the importance of everybody working on a movie. Everybody's important,
Absolutely, yeah.
And
I mean, I was working, for example, I was in the costume department. First movie, I was actually a driver of the costume truck. One of the drivers, because I had like 3 of them. It was an East German-Swiss co-production. The first time East Germany, behind the wall, went and did a co-production with a Western country. It was actually it was a, historic
where were you
thing.
shooting?
We were shooting in Zurich.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a film that took place during the Reformation. So, and it was a big historical drama. And it was just great to see how this, as well, you see the props and all these, the costumes and how it comes together, and how creative these people are. I mean, it's unbelievable what they got, how real everything looked. For me that was like, this is not theater, this is movie. I mean, like the fabrics were aged to in a way that is absolutely believable.
All the work that goes in there, and the artistry,
just the and I still have some props from there. Actually, really? I have a big necklace, sort of clergy necklace.
Oh, is that the one you're wearing in your photo?
Yeah, exactly, with the cross. I mean, that was like a real. It's like a real thing. And they were, sort of giving. I still have some fake tourmaline and different stones, which are incredibly beautifully cut. I mean, they're like,
from
the best
that movie.
fakes from that movie. Because.
And then in London, like, how many years was your film school?
It's a 2-year course. I did first before I started, I was there for 3/4 of a year, and then I was altogether there for 4 years, because then you have to do a thesis and so on.
But do you do a broad film thing and then you specialize within the process, or how you can study like directing or camera or whatever?
That school, the London Film School, is all-rounder school, so you have to do everything, which I actually think is a really good thing.
Yeah, because
so
you understand
you have to do everything.
the other
You
department.
don't specialize as such. You specialize in so far as what you're doing in each term's his films, on the other group's his films. So I ended up being the camera person on a lot of films, because they all wanted me, because I was good at it.
And that was also your choice. You were happy about it?
Yeah. That's I about halfway through I realized that I wanted to be a cameraman, a lighting cameraman.
You didn't want to drive the costume truck anymore.
Well, I didn't want to be a director. Let's put it that way. Okay. Everybody wants to be a director. I didn't want to be a director.
Okay.
I wanted to be a cameraman. This became very clear, and I was
When was that?
incredibly happy to have that. I was like 27 when I realized I know now where I want to go. I know I have far to go.
It's a good feeling, right?
But I knew, and all my friends, for example, who were still at university doing their doctorates or whatnot, and
trying to figure it out.
Germanistics or whatnot, they all didn't know what to do. They all didn't really want to be just a German professor or English professor.
Yeah.
I for sure didn't want to get that. That's why I needed to get out of the English
because that's
seminar.
where you eventually end up when you study.
Well, yeah, it's one of the things,
literature.
or you become a journalist or whatever.
Right.
But so I was, I think, very blessed that I found out relatively early, which is, I think 27 is actually early.
I think so too.
I
still haven't figured it out.
Well, it's actually really good. in a way, the German and the Swiss system is great because you don't specialize so early. I
Yes.
didn't during high school. You don't specialize
Yes.
yet, and then when you go to university, it's like if you do a
You try out things, right? More. You
yeah,
have
yes,
diversify
right,
your
and
studies.
as well, you get a very broad education. I think.
Yeah.
I took, I was in the old language gymnasium, with Latin and all that. Of course, a lot of wasted time in a way, but on the other hand, it was, yeah, no, it's really.
What's the one thing that stuck? Carpe diem.
I still, I probably through these 7 years, I was, we had like 9 hours per week. I mean, it was like major.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and I still can't speak a word of Latin.
But you speak camera, so
Yeah.
so then you knew exactly what you wanted to do within the 4 years that you spent in the film school. Was it like halfway through that?
Yeah, about halfway through, I really realized that's what I wanted to do, then as well, because I was in all the project I was involved. I was doing the camera. I directed one film, one short, and then for my thesis, I directed a short. But I knew I didn't want to direct. I mean, other people could do that better. I much rather felt that I could.
Why do you think? What's the reason for it? It's just because the love of the camera and the imagery and setting the lights and all of that. Because
well, the thing is, like, if you're a director, is really, I think, probably the most difficult job there is on earth. If you're a good director, you have to have several incredible talents. You have to be able to write. You have to have a good mind, remember things. You have to be a good communicator, but you have to be able to take decisions every minute, and that's very hard. Now, I think in any job where you are like, at the top, you have to take decisions. You have to do that as well. Me as a cinematographer, you end up having taken be able to take decisions as well. But the director, it's really hard because you're questioned all the time by producers, by a studio, you have to have ideas. You have to be really creative. You can't just wait till a project comes to you. You really have to, yeah. And so I really admire actually all the directors I've worked with. I have been very, very fortunate to have been working with really special, very diverse directors.
So the first director I remember you said you went to film school with, right? That you did the first kind of big movie with, like Mike Hoffman.
Yeah, no, but I didn't go to that. That is actually kind of an interesting story.
Okay.
Because I was back in Switzerland. I couldn't stay in London because I couldn't get a work permit there. And tried to get married, didn't work, married dockery, married somebody else, bitch. No, we're all very good friends, but she married my very good friend, and just to get the work permit. So anyway, I went back to Switzerland, started to work there, and did anything one could in the field, and I worked. Thank God, I knew already quite a lot of camera people. I ended up assisting. Then I started to produce my own little industrials, so give myself the job to shoot them, and it worked actually quite all right. But then early on, it was about half a year after I was back in Switzerland, I got a phone call from my friend Fiona Cunningham-Reid, and she said, like, look, she was in film school with me, 2 terms above me. And she said, like, she got these Oxford students, they want to do a movie. She needs a camera operator. And she called me because I was,
You were the guy.
I was the guy there. So I told Fiona, it's great, but, I'm broke. My parents don't pay anything anymore. I don't have a grant anymore. I have to make money. And she said, like, they're going to pay your airfare.
What am I going to eat?
No, and then, first I said, and then, of course, I called her immediately back and said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And literally the next day I flew to London. She picked me up at the airport. This was a really low, no budget movie, and she picked me up in a Ford van, and we went to Lee Lighting, put some lights in that we got for free, sponsored, into that van, a 16mm camera package, very basic, and drove to Oxford, and that's where I met Mike Hoffman.
And he was the director.
He was the director. He was Mike Hoffman was a Rhodes Scholar. That studied in Oxford, obviously, and he wanted to be an actor, not a director. He directed theatre, and they just came back from a big, the Oxford Theatre Group.
Right.
They just did won some prizes for some Shakespeare they did, and anyway, he was sort of from another American, got him to direct this film. And so when I met Mike, he was just behind a bush throwing up because he was so nervous. It was the first day of shooting. And somehow we got through this film. And it was a film called Privileged. But I mean, that experience started a lot. On that set, I actually was the most experienced person on that set. And I knew that I knew not much. I mean, I was very clear of what my where I was at. I sure didn't think that.
But how big was the camera department?
The camera was the camera was me and Fiona, who was a lighting camera woman, and I had a PA assistant, basically. So it was basically.
And that was a feature.
People. It was a feature. It was a historic feature with lots of. We had extraordinary locations in Oxford. It was extraordinary. And then, after the first 2 weeks, the BBC basically saw the dailies and said they would gonna buy it. And then, actually, John Schlesinger was our sort of godfather for the movie because he came from the same Christchurch College. He was there as well, and he Schlesinger at the time just did a movie, had done a movie which was his biggest dud ever. It was, what was the film called? I mean, they threw an elephant out of a thing with a. I mean, it was.
Wait, when you say Christchurch College, you mean he and Mike Hoffman went together?
Mike Hoffman was there, but he was kind of.
But he knew
a
Mike.
mentor. He was a mentor at that college, and Mike and Rick Stevenson, who was the producer, were students, and so he became sort of the mentor of the film. And because of him, because he made this phone call to Lee Lighting, for example, we got a free camera package.
Okay.
Because he just gave so much money to all these people, because he made a huge movie which made no money whatsoever. So everybody owed him a lot. Because,
so he helped you guys out.
He helped us out.
See, you always have to have that kind of.
No, absolutely, and that was really good.
Godfather.
And it was really cool because John Schlesinger came to the set a couple of times, and he was very helpful. But the interesting thing was a film. The BBC picked it up after it was actually Sony MI later. They released it. It was even released in the theater, blown up to 35mm. But everybody in this little endeavor made it into movies. Mike Hoffman, I did 4 films altogether with him. My first big studio picture, Soap Dish, I did with Mike Hoffman. But as well, I mean, the actors on that film, I mean, they all had never seen a camera before. It was Hugh Grant, Imogen Stubbs, James Wilby, Helena Bonham Carter. Who else was there? I mean, it was like. Huey hadn't seen, had to be careful not to bump into the furniture, he was like. Robert Downey Jr. was not there now. He's an American. He was an American. Robert Downey Jr. was in Soap Dish later.
We're talking about.
No, but this was this was a film. And when was it? It was 1980 or 81.
Were these actors semi kind of on the map already?
No, not at all. They were like students.
Wow.
No, they were not on the map at all. But
it's amazing that all of you in that movie,
it was interesting,
in their field, have gone to places.
Yeah, I mean, literally, from the boom swinger to the first AD,
Really?
And whoever played the role of first AD, they all went. I mean, Andy Patterson became a good producer. He was the first AD, and the Boom Swinger, she became an editor, and then she's a writer. She wrote, for example, The Girl with the Pearl Earrings.
Wow.
I mean, like they all made it in the movie industry. Interesting. And so, that brought me. That was of course, one of the big breaks in my
So
life.
how did that get the ball rolling for your future career? What
Well, I
affected
went back to
that?
Switzerland. I became great friends with Mike Hoffman, and he had another project together with the writer Rupert Walters, and he got into the Sundance Lab, which was very early then. It was a new Sundance Lab by Robert Redford, and Redford basically became his sponsor or his mentor. So we had this film, Promised Land, and we tried to do. I mean, Mike would come visit to Switzerland. I would go when I had some money. Would go to Idaho because he was a Boise, Idaho boy, and I was already together with my now husband Thomas, So when Mike would come and he would stay with us in Zurich, and I mean, we were like. I remember meeting Robert Redford, which was incredible with Mike then, because Redford tried to help, and so we drove to Sundance.
Amazing.
And Redford took us to his house, and he showed me his house. I remember it
was he a nice guy?
Unbelievable! It was so great.
Was he nice?
He was incredibly nice, and he was very thrilled that I was Swiss. So he showed me the mountain range. Look, this looks like like Eichmünchen, like Jungfrau. That's why I built this house here, and and it was.
Was it like a chalet?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, it's a really beautiful house because Redford actually was an architect as well.
Yeah, I heard that.
Very good, energy efficient house. I mean, very ahead of the.
He's a very conscious guy.
Very, very conscious guy.
That's cool.
So anyway, what happened?
So you come to America the first time, just casually meet Robert Redford.
Yeah, right. I mean, he weasels in the house in his dressing gown because he has to change, and I'm faint, that kind of things like that. I mean, because Redford at the time, you can't imagine how famous he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was.
Of course.
I mean, he was bigger than Brad Pitt ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really
icon.
An icon.
Yeah, he still is.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Switzerland, back to industrials doing whatever. Focus pull on a small feature, and
that's
Mike
after your little Sundance visit.
Yeah, right.
And
because
you're like,
we were still,
what am I doing
still
here?
trying to get that film going. Michael
Promised Land.
Promised Land. Michael was trying to get finances. It fell through again, whatnot, and then Mike was in. Then Mike comes as well. Visit in Zurich. I remember exactly. We were sitting on our balcony on Beckerstrasse in Zurich. Thomas, Mike, and I, and the phone rings, and it's a phone call from America, and Rick Seaton says, "We have a producer.
Wow.
Redford is going to produce the movie."
No way.
Which immediately meant that I couldn't shoot it because all of a sudden it became a real American movie.
Why not?
Medium. Well, as a unknown Swiss DP without credits, no way.
Okay.
So, of course, I didn't want to not be there. So I would go. I of course in pre-production I was there, and then they actually let me shoot second unit. I mean, I got the job to shoot second unit. I didn't have a work permit. I have nothing.
So it was like under the radar.
Under the radar, and they hired Thomas to be the makeup artist.
Wow.
I mean, he came in probably about 2 months after I was already there for prep.
Where did
they
you shoot?
didn't find a DP in Salt Lake City. Aye. And
Mormontown.
Yeah, Mormontown. But it was really
Wait,
cool.
They didn't find a DP?
They hired a DP only like probably 3 weeks before we started to shoot. As well, because money fell out and came back again, and so the production designer that we had left because he had another show, and so Mike went to Los Angeles to find a DP and the production designer. He came back with the DP and with Eugenia Zanetti as a production designer. And sort of Eugenia and I, of course, immediately got on really well. And
who was the DP?
I don't mention the name because he was actually fired after the first week, and they asked me to
And you
take
took-
over for a minute, just and I didn't even know what was on the trucks. And anyway, they kept me on, and I ended up because I
DP
really
the movie.
I DP'd the movie, but they kept me on because I was so cheap. I mean, I was cheap.
But maybe that's what
Yeah.
you think.
But I did. So I finished the movie, and that was my first credit as a film. It was really, really, and it turned out actually like a really nice movie. That didn't do much money, but it was a very nice film.
Was
And
it critically acclaimed?
Yep, it was actually, but it's somehow the
I have to see
studio
it.
that I have it actually. I have a DVD. and
Who's
it's
in
actually
it?
a really nice film. It's Meg Ryan and Kiefer Sutherland
Uh-huh.
and another some more. I mean, it's a good cast. And yeah, I mean, I do have that DVD. You must watch that
Yeah.
one because we should watch it together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then then
well,
after that was done?
After that, I
You
went back
still
to Switzerland and
lived in Switzerland.
went on working as an assistant, and which was really great that I could do that. Nobody knew in Switzerland that I just shot actually a pretty big American movie, so which was really cool. So then a year later, Mike had another project. His next movie, Some Girls, was an MGM production and was shot in Canada, so I could actually shoot it now now I could shoot it from the beginning. And in Canada, I actually got a work permit because Canada and Switzerland
easier,
have that.
right?
Yeah, it's easier. So that film, Some Girls, was again when it came out. That was a really nice film, and that got me an agent, Sandra Marsh, in London when we did the color timing actually in London of that movie. I showed it to her, and she accepted me as her client, and she was my agent till the end, till now. Sandra Marshall. I mean, for
Did she
40 years.
retire?
She retired now. It's now her, the agency, the other people in the agency. She retired herself.
So that was basically the first official DP title in an American film. Or in a Hollywood film, so to speak. Although you were shooting in Canada, right?
Yeah,
it was still
but
a Hollywood production.
it was a Hollywood. It was a MGM movie.
I mean,
I'm
it
so
sounds
proud.
so weird to
it
say
had the
Hollywood.
roaring. It was a movie with a roaring lion. In the front. I mean,
and then your name
couldn't be any better. Yeah, and one card credit.
Was that kind of a little surreal when you first saw
Completely surreal, because I mean, yeah. And then I went back to Switzerland, worked as an assistant because I could, So in between, that is really great. It was a great thing to make money and to sustain yourself because and I got actually then in Switzerland I got a job as for a TV series, a cop series. I did a few episodes of that, and
you broke your promise never to be in TV.
Yeah, it was my first stuff in Switzerland, the only stuff in Switzerland I actually ever did, because then came an other movie. Well, then Mike had another movie that ended up not really happening. We prepped, but the money fell through. But by then, the film Some Girls had sort of made its way from Sundance to Los Angeles. And then very big film critic of the LA Times, Sheila Benson, she loved the movie and wrote a huge, nearly a one-page review of the film. And that sort of, and only in Los Angeles it really was in the movie theaters for so long. It was in the movie theaters for 3 months in a small theater, but it was, so a lot of people saw it. So it helped me a lot. And I was back in Switzerland when I got a phone call from agent Dennis Hopper wants to see me, and which was,
holy shit.
Which was for
Did
me,
you think they were kidding?
Well, I didn't think it was kidding. I just
couldn't believe
it. I couldn't. I fainted because Dennis for me was a big. Again, then Dennis Hopper was. I mean,
another icon.
He was the writer director of Easy Rider. Come
exactly.
On,
I mean, look at you,
icon,
Robert Redford, #1. Then like Dennis Hopper. That's incredible.
So anyway, I mean, I just thought like that's impossible, you know. And,
But did he
I
see
had
some
to.
girls,
He
and
sees some girls.
that's how he found
That's how
you?
he found me, and then how he wanted to meet me. I mean, I didn't know it, so I had to fly. Literally, it was a Friday. I got the call Saturday. I went on a plane. After Sunday, I was in LA and slept on Eugenio's couch, and on a Monday morning drove to Venice to Dennis Hopper's house,
Wow.
and which was in a very gang-infested neighborhood. You know, with my little rental car.
What year was that?
That was 1986, I
Oh
think.
yeah, it was still gangster.
Oh, yeah,
down there.
very
Yeah.
gangster. And to this house, which was incredible, in the middle of this, you know, really infested. It's the first house that Frank Gehry built
Wow.
as a private residence.
Wow.
I mean, you know, Dennis was incredible. He had all these, you know,
Friends
he discovered a lot of people.
He was rolling in that whole.
Well, he was
crew, right?
he's
Like,
definitely an arts person, you know, and
Yeah.
he you know he gave a lot of people chances, and Frank Gehry was one of them. You know, he had him to do the first house. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just looked into Dennis's face for basically half an hour. That was it. We only talked about Jennifer Connelly. She was in that other in Some Girls in the movie, and
When she was like.
she was 16. She was 16 when we did Some Girls, and you know, he fell in love with her tits, and I mean, you know, sorry, but I mean that's probably exactly what it was.
Did he say that?
He didn't use that word, but it was very obvious. You
Yeah.
know, and we only talked about her, and then I left and said like, wow, I've just talked to them. Now I've met, you know, Robert Redford, and I looked into the face of Dennis Hopper. I can retire now. I can go home and be, you know, I can tell stories for the end of my days. And so.
But he didn't want to particularly meet you about a project. He just wanted.
It was a particular project. I had the script. I read it overnight, but we didn't talk about it at all. Okay. I knew what the film was.
But maybe he just wanted to feel you out and stuff. Because,
yeah,
right?
but I mean, like that was Dennis. You know, I don't know. If anyway, then you know, I went back to Eugenia's, and there was phone rang, and there was a guy called, you know, I'm Paul Lewis. I'm the producer of the Hotspot. We are going to pre-shoot a 2-day pre-shoot for the title sequence in El Centro in the desert. And I said, like, oh yeah, that's the opening of the film. What camera do we need? And they said,
and you were like, wait a second.
No, I didn't think anything. It's like, there's no sound. We can actually make it cheap. We can do that with an RE435. We don't need sound. So blah blah blah. And then I hung up. And then I only thought like how the hell? Why did he call me? You know, and then my agent calls and said like, they want to hire you. Don't answer the phone anymore. You have to do a deal.
Wow.
But it was really incredible. And you know, and I never, for a long time, didn't know why Dennis chose me.
Did you never ask him?
No, but
afterwards.
No, I didn't. I never ask him that. I just, for the longest time, thought like, well, for the first this pre-shoot, I thought like they just used me because it was It was going to happen in like 3 weeks, and then we, you know, after that. Those 2 days in El Centro, I thought like, you know, now they get a real DP.
Else.
You know, Haskell Wexler shot the film before. I mean, it's like, you know, there's all these huge people.
Yeah.
And
you're like, what am I doing here?
Well, you question. I didn't really. I mean, I took it. You know, I took it on, and you know, now looking back, I mean, I don't know how the hell I did it.
But you were fearless, like, because you...
I was fearless. I don't know. I was completely fearless. I used filters like crazy. I did like all this stuff without talking to Dennis. Dennis never talked to me about the movie much. I mean, he didn't even go scout with me in El Centro. I mean, so his first shoots I did, he said, go there and go there. Yeah, I mean, I did all these things because he didn't say. I mean, I'm pretty good at it. I just took,
control. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And so I thought after these 2 days now, I had to fly back to Zurich to get my work permit because my work permit was not done yet. So I had to go back. And I remember it was like August 1st, which is national holiday in Switzerland. So the American embassy was closed. So, so it all took a few days longer.
Mhm.
And I told Dennis, call me when you see the dailies, because I couldn't go and see the dailies because I had to leave. So he calls me actually in Zurich, and he says, "Man, it looked great." and so I said, and then I thought, "Oh fuck, I'm not fired." I mean, it was really actually. That was interesting. And then we started to prep proper for the film, and the film was shot in Austin, Texas, outside in Taylor, Texas, outside Austin. We were based in Austin, and it was a very intense experience on many levels. It was my first real American movie as a real movie star, Don Johnson. I mean, TV star then, but I'd never seen anything like it. Somebody being flown in by helicopter to the set, except, I mean, whatever. I mean, a lot of stories are there, yeah. But it was
What
for the
stories?
first, to just finish that, for the first part, I was like, I still didn't know why Dennis hired me, but I figured out very early on, in a way, how to communicate with him. He was incredible, but he was very difficult to actually get his attention and keep his attention for more than like 5 seconds. But when you had it, he was very intense. But as soon as some tits and ass would walk by, he was gone. He was gone. I mean,
Who was the
that sounds
tits and
really
ass
bad,
in
but
that
it
movie?
actually was. Well, there were like extras from Hooters, things like that. I mean, but in a charming way, during
Right.
prep. I mean, he took me to every strip joint in Texas. I know.
Did he
I
know
met
you were not
all the girls.
interested?
Oh yeah. He knew that I was gay,
Yeah.
and he knew as well Thomas. He
Right.
actually was very open. I mean, Thomas came to visit.
Yeah.
As well there. And he knew every girl by name, of course. He was very special, and he was still tripping. He was out of drugs probably a bit more than a year by then, I guess.
He was sober.
He was sober, and but he still had flashbacks.
Really? Like residual?
Yeah, and he
I know.
I mean
Wow.
he was, but
How did that manifest? Like, did you know when it was happening? Like, how did, for example?
well, he could be very mean to not mean to people, but you know what he can look like in Blue Velvet. When he does his sniffing thing.
Uh-huh.
He could look at people that your ass would get very small, your anus would go up to your throat. He could do that.
Wow.
He never did it to me, though.
Yeah, he was
He
nice
never
to
did,
you.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, like after the first week, the producer comes to me and said, like, "Hey, Dennis never yells at you in dailies." And I said, "Yeah." He always yells at the DPs in dailies. And I said, "Oh, okay." I don't know.
Lucky me.
Lucky me. Yeah. No, I mean, and I was still wondering why he chose me, and he really chose me.
Looking back,
looking back, he
would you
just
wish
chose
you
me.
would have asked him
No.
after?
No, he didn't
You
need
know,
to,
kind
because
of.
at one point I realized he chose me, and
did,
there was no
exactly.
reason why.
To question that.
Obviously, I had a big, because I was Swiss, he liked that I was Swiss. That probably originally he called
Yeah.
as well. He loved that movie, Some Girls. And yeah, he chose me, and he chose really well. I'm the only DP who shot two movies for him. I shot the next movie, Chasers as well, and then I kept with, he always kept me, called me when he had another project. None of them ever happened because
Was Chasers his last movie?
it was
as
his
a
last movie as a
director?
director. Yeah, and then I mean,
Wow.
he
You did his
then
last
only
movie with him. How was the
last
second
two
time around,
movies.
the second experience, Chaser?
That was a lot different because it was a
Easier
film.
or?
It was more difficult. He was in a not so good space because they actually fired halfway through Paul Lewis, who was his producer since Easy Rider, and he wanted to make a film that was a comedy and a box office thing, and
It was
they
not
didn't
authentic,
let him do. I mean, he's Dennis Hopper. They didn't let him to do a Dennis Hopper movie. He's a it's a pity. The film was not very successful.
But that's what happens
after.
when you get people out of their habitat and you try to force something on
Right.
them. It just never kind of translates into something good, I find. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have probably done this
So
movie.
he-
I mean, I knew that, but anyway, I learned so much from him because I had this incredible privilege to always be in all the rehearsals. Don Johnson was difficult, and
Was he a diva?
he was more than a he was more than a diva. And Dennis really did not like him. I mean, they really did not get on. He didn't want him in the lead role of the hotspot. Studio wanted him to do, basically, and he really made Don Johnson give an incredible performance. It's actually, I still do think it's the best thing Don Johnson ever done. He's really great in that film as this lonely drifter who is, getting lured in by Virginia Madsen. The film is very interesting. It's a kind of a film noir, very colorful. It's a very colorful film, and as always, if I look back, I don't know how the hell I did it. It's actually pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. It looks really great. I mean, it's kind of a cult movie.
It's a cult movie for sure.
Yeah.
So is that after that he didn't do any more movies, but you guys stayed in touch?
We stayed in touch, yeah.
Nice.
But I mean, not very regular. I mean, he's a movie star.
Right.
You don't really I mean, he came to parties at the house a couple of times and so on.
Yeah.
But then I sort of lost him. He became a Republican and he plays golf and yeah.
What?
Well, yeah. And
I did not
he
know
took me
that
to
about
golf
him.
course and said, "Man, I'm playing golf." Yeah, but
Shocking.
yeah. Well,
Wow.
money. Uh, but he exceptional person.
And then what movie did you do after that?
Then I went back to Switzerland and worked as an assistant.
Again?
Actually, that's not true. That's when I went and did one TV thingy, this 3 episodes of
that
Eurocops. Yeah, I remember. Aye. Anyway, and Mike had then another film, and that was a studio picture, the film Soap Dish, and the studio let Michael have me as a DP. So that became my first big studio film.
Because
in
Dennis
Hollywood.
Hoppers were independent.
Yeah, it was an independent movie.
I
It
remember
was a big
Soap
independent
Dish
movie.
was one of my favorite movies, and I remember when I met you and you told me you did it, I was like, I couldn't believe it because I've seen it. Like I knew every line, and I could I don't know why. It was something. This and City Slickers were my things.
Yeah. It is a great film.
It's a great film. I want to see it again.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay,
again,
we have a movie
we have
date
to do it.
now
I
for
actually
2.
just talked to Mike Hoffman and said, like, you have to make sure that this film is going to get retransferred.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that these film now, it doesn't have a high def transfer, and nobody did that, and the studio really should do that. That's
Where's are these movies films sitting in archives?
Yeah, it's a Paramount library. I mean, I don't know, but it would need it is not that expensive, but you have to go to the negative and retransfer.
Yeah.
Basically restore the film, but even lightly restore it, would be so worth it, to get a Blu-ray of that movie.
Yeah.
It would give the whole movie another life.
Yeah.
Same thing, by the way, with The Hotspot. That's really sad that film is nearly lost. I have
And where's that sitting?
That is, and I don't know. That was actually Carolco, I think, and they got sold, and somebody will own it, but I don't know how to. Somebody should. I mean, Criterion should do that, redo that film, really. But
where did you guys shoot Soap Dish?
Paramount on
in
the
LA?
Paramount Lock here in.
Those were the days.
Those
right?
were the
When you
days.
just have-
Everything on the lot, and
You drove to
in
work
New
in 20
York.
minutes.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
And in New York, I stayed at Ross Heller's house.
Yeah.
Under
Up
her
in
desk,
Canyon.
under mountains.
Did you
of
wear
her-
a helmet so that
I had to wear a
folks-
helmet that they wouldn't fall onto my face, on my head. Hey, Ross was great. She was my Hollywood godmother in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, she showed me everything here. It was really cool.
Shout out to Russ
And
Heller. She's on the
yeah,
podcast too.
I know. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right, great. So we shot for Soapdish as well in New York, of course. I mean, there was a New York part. The rest was in a New York street on Paramount. Or did we even shoot on? No, it was. I think we shot everything on at the Paramount lot. Huge stage. I mean, huge stage. It was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that stages existed, really. You know,
That
and
size.
there I was just unbelievable. I remember Eugenio Zanetti, production designer. We walked onto that stage on Paramount, and I was just. I did say nothing because I didn't even know what the stage looked like. You know, I mean, I was still very fresh. You know.
Yeah.
And then there was this big stage with a tank in it, and Eugenia said, like maybe we should just use this tank as the pit where they shoot this horrible daylight television series with the queen of daylight television, Sally Field, in it, and so he built that set around that stage. The whole stage became the set, and I could bring my gaffer, Jim Gertsch. We were all very young. He was a young gaffer.
Did he gaff with you on the Dennis Hopper films?
Yeah, he did.
But you met him
That's
then
where I
here.
hired him. No, I met him for the Dennis Hopper film. My whole crew I met for this Dennis Hopper film. My key people, Nate Goodman, yes, Joe. But the focus puller was actually Nate Goodman. And Joe Sanchez was the second assistant, though he was on the very first two shooting days. He was the first because Nate couldn't do it. So very funny. And Joe Sanchez, I've been together till for 25 years.
Very loyal.
He came back into
team.
He started to focus pull, and then for a bunch of the Hollywood movies that I did, he wasn't there. But then he came back for Godzilla, where I moved up Nate Goodman to be the camera operator. And then since then, Joe was my
So Soapdish was Robert.
But it was always a whole family,
Yeah.
I traveled with
my
camera family, and
You're
they all
very
grew up
loyal.
in my family.
Yeah, it's great. It's like a little family when you're on a movie. It's even the whole entire team is like a family, right?
It really is, yeah.
Time together.
Yeah.
It's like a band on the road, It's like,
It really is a bit like that, for me especially. I mean, because I always I had to rely all on my crew and my people.
And how they're working, and you get
And
them.
it's friendship. I mean, it's really like
friendship.
family because you are always on the road. It's just I couldn't have worked without having people around me that I liked.
Because this nurtures you, and it's also something. I mean, how terrible would it be to work with somebody you don't like personally? And I think it's very important.
As well, your crew. I mean, my crew saves my ass every day. My focus puller tells me, you better put. Didn't we put the filter in on that last scene? And then
You're like, oops.
Oops, or if I say like a weird f-stop, he said, like, "Are you sure? Is that right?"
But that's why they exist.
Of course, and the gaffer does everything for me. Without a gaffer, I couldn't function at all.
I like your job.
Was
Robert Downey? Was he like already a known actor at the time? He was.
Yeah,
right?
he was. He was a known actor.
Yeah.
He was very good. He was a bit. He was actually. He was then going out with
Sarah Jessica
Parker, right? And no, he was actually a really cool guy. He was a bit a troubled boy then already.
I think he was more troubled later.
And then he became really troubled.
But
he was already
now.
He was already
God
troubled.
bless him.
No, he
good
did
for him.
Really well.
He had
a
really good
Yeah, my good friend Arne Nannestad, he played the director in Soapdish, the director of the soap opera. Arne, yeah.
Really?
He had a very good big part. I actually got him that part, and he kept to be very good friends with Robert Downey, so they were always in contact when Arne was here. But now Arne has left us, sadly. you know,
God bless him.
to the next world. Yeah.
But at this time, then you were established now in.
I mean, that was my first.
Kind
Well, that was 1990. I couldn't say I wouldn't live in Zurich anymore. That was the last film where I did as soap dish, where I was still officially in Switzerland. And after that, I got a work permit here, a permanent work permit, and afterwards a green card and so on. Yeah, I mean, after this movie,
Did the offers come in?
during the shooting of Soap Dish, I met another director, young director, who was like an Oscar winner for writing, Cameron Crowe. And Cameron, I met him and I took him to the set of Soap Dish. We sort of got on well, and he offered to me to his next movie, which is a film called Singles.
I love Singles.
So yeah, so afterwards that was Warner Brothers. So that was another studio picture. So
Wait,
yeah,
what did-
by then I was established.
Wait, what did he win an Oscar for writing before that?
He wrote Fast Times at Richmond High,
He did?
and he was like 16 or 19 or something like that. Yeah, he was the youngest ever Oscar winner for writing for original screenplay.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
I mean, he wrote all this stuff for Rolling Stone magazine. I
Yeah.
love it. Like in
Yes.
the movie Almost Famous, it's
Right.
like about
That's
him.
his
really,
story. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a cool story and how he pretended, like when he called Jan Wenner, like hello, it's like, and it was like this little boy sitting in his teenage room. You know, he's like,
No, he was so great. I mean, he was as well. Singles was probably my best experience on
I
a
love
movie
that.
ever. We had such a good
yeah.
time.
Did you shoot it in Seattle?
We shot it in Seattle.
And
yeah.
you met Eddie Vedder,
Yes.
and you met Chris Cornell.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were all in the movie.
I
you
know.
Only Pearl Jam wasn't there because they were too expensive already.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that was, and Cameron Crowe was. I just had a really good time there.
He's very like music affine, like because
Very
he
much
was
so,
a
yeah.
music journalist. He's
Very much so.
married even to
Mhm.
kind of musician. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you think that was the real establishment in Hollywood after that movie? So Soap Dish and then Singles, boom.
Yeah, by then, of course, to have two big movies, and I was still very young. I was like 33 or something like
Wow.
that. I was very young. I didn't know, While you're in it, you just go and you say like, "Uli, do what you can, do
Yeah.
your best." I mean,
Yeah.
it was like,
Take the opportunity and
and
give your
I didn't
best.
even. I mean, only now that I look back, I see I had incredible opportunities, and I took them. I mean, the big step was that Dennis Hopper,
Yeah.
chose me.
Yeah.
That opened up really a lot, and then with Mike Hoffman doing a studio picture, because from the Dennis Hopper film I would have never gotten
Yeah.
a studio film. It had to be Michael who got me onto the
Mhm.
studio track. So
Is that also important, like how you move into kind of a union or something like that?
yes, you had to. It had to become I had to get into the union, which I could, which is no problem. And the studio did all the work for me. I mean, they did my work permit. They paid the immigration lawyer.
Great.
They flew me first class from Switzerland to
Those were
to
the
LA.
days.
Those were the days. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I went to in Zurich to the airport, and they had the ticket at the airport. I picked it up and I fainted. I said, like, for this money, I could bring all my friends with me. They better roll out the red carpet.
Oh, those
And-
were
and-
were those the first flights where the silver cutlery
yeah, the silver
accidentally fell into
It was the
your
only
pocket?
flights. I only did two.
How many
Been back
courses
and
did you
forth.
eat?
I ate a lot, and I don't
get-
know
to
why
get
these
all these-
spoons and these knives and everything. It just fell into my. I
Oops.
don't know. Oops, into my bag. So I have
I
a
love
set of I think 10 of everything. Swiss Air, which is now really
know.
historic because they don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
They went bankrupt. They're now called Swiss.
yeah, I know, and it's kind of exactly it's half of what it was before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but it's very funny. So anyway, that was. But yeah, Soap Dish.
So then
brought me here.
you had the full like green card or afterwards.
No, I had a sort of
O1.
called. It was then called H1, but it was
H1,
like
yeah.
an umbrella visa for I think 5 years, And then after that, I applied for a green card.
But then you moved here.
I moved here.
After which movie? After
After
Singles?
Soap Dish.
After
After Singles.
After
Actually,
Singles.
Singles in Seattle. Thomas came to visit. He stayed at Eugenio's in LA. He called me. He's on his way to Seattle. And he said that there's an apartment free in Eugenio's apartment building. I said, how is it? And he said, well, it's not so nice, but it has a great red stove.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, take it. So
Is
that's
that the
when he
red
rented
stove
that.
you
That's the red
still
stove,
have?
which is now in our house in Silver Lake.
Wow.
Yeah.
They let you take it?
Yeah, it was because he was like a kind of our landlord
You had to
was an
restore
idiot.
it?
Had to restore it.
Uh-huh.
That was my.
And that was in Koreatown, right?
That was in Koreatown. Yeah, it was a great place.
So that was your landing place
Yeah.
in LA.
That was it was an apartment building like the apartment building in Singles. It
Uh-huh.
was very much like that. We knew all the people. Michael Kennedy
Yeah.
lived there. Eugenio. Then a gaffer, a German gaffer
Didn't
lived
Laurie
there.
and
Laurie and Sven.
Yeah.
And
All creative.
You know, all creative. It was
So
exactly like the movie Singles. You know, it was actually we lived there for I think 2 years, and then we bought our house.
Wow.
Because then then we bought the house in Silver Lake.
What year was that?
93.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Shortly before I came.
Shortly before I came. Yeah,
But then
before you came.
what did you do? Because I met you because you were doing Independence Day, but you did something in between, right?
Yeah, I did several things in between. Of course, I did 2 other. I did. That's when I did a couple of smaller films. One with Jamie Lee Curtis, which I forget the name.
Right.
Then I did, of course, with Leslie Glatter. I did her first movie, Leslie Linka. That was, and again, I don't know. That's a girls' film. Every girl in America knows this movie. And it's one of those things. I always have a hanger with the name of that film. I don't know why. It was called the. Huh?
The one with Jamie was House Arrest.
That was House Arrest, exactly. And this one was actually called the Gaslight Edition when we shot it, but then it came out and had a different thing. It was. It had 2 sets of actors, kids and the old when they were older. Now and then, yeah. And then Don Johnson's wife, Melinda Griffith, was in it, and tell me who was all in it.
Lifeline.
Lifeline, help! I'm so horrible. The girls were Christina Ricci, Gabby Hoffman, and then it was Demi Moore, and Rita Wilson. I mean, like Tom Hanks' wife.
I love her.
And what's her name? The comedian.
Hank.
Oh, Hank Azaria was in it. He had a small part, but the comedian kind of girl.
Oh, Rosie.
Rosie O'Donnell. Yeah, she was great. So 4 women.
Comedian.
4 women. It was unbelievable. These women. It was great. That was actually another good experience, and I had a great time with Leslie Linka. And that's when Thomas won the green card in a lottery, and it was official that he could actually come to the United States as well and work here, because his career was really in Europe.
Mm-hmm. But he, of course, because you were here, he wanted to come.
Yeah, right. I mean,
and for his career.
We actually already bought the house, and he didn't have a work permit, but we actually bought the house.
So he won it.
Yeah, we of course, everybody wanted to marry him to bring him over and help, but then all these women, at the end, they still thought like maybe
they can convert
maybe Prince
him.
Charming is coming, still.
Oh.
No, they wouldn't want to convert, but it's like and I'm glad, but he won the green card in the green card lottery. It was really cool. So yeah, that was 94, I think.
And I'm so glad that you jumped into Independence Day, because otherwise we would have never met.
Exactly, we would have never gotten each other.
Yeah.
Because that was actually another thing, Walter Lindenlaub. I think I've just did I do Bowfinger?
No, that was much later.
That was later.
Yeah, because I visited
Austin
you with
Powers and
Bowfingers
Bowfinger was later.
Austin Powers on the set.
Right. You visited on the set. What did this was Karl Walter Lindenlaub. Walter Lindenlaub was a DP on Independence Day,
Yeah.
and I
And
know
his
know
wife
him
was
from
pregnant,
Germany.
right?
His
Yeah.
wife was
Oh, you
pregnant.
knew him.
I knew him
Oh, okay.
from a film festival in Germany, and he called me and said, like, look, can you take over for a couple of days? I'm doing this movie. My wife is pregnant and she's going to have a baby pretty soon. We don't know when. Could you come back? And I said, sure. And when can you come to the set? So I went to the set, met Roland, went back home with a beeper, with
my God, a beeper.
a beeper. Yeah, a pager.
A pager.
We had a pager. They gave me a pager in case, when it would happen. And then
I thought a pager was the coolest thing.
It was
when I
very
moved
cool.
here. I'm like, it didn't exist
Yeah, you
in
could
Europe.
sort of
I'm
look
like,
down and see.
I thought
who
I'm
called.
like a surgeon who's going to...
Yeah, right. Very funny. So anyway, the pager went off the next day, and I went back down to it's not Laguna Beach.
Long Beach.
Long Beach.
No? Yeah.
No, it's not Long Beach. Manhattan Beach. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
there are these big hangars, big.
The
And I
Howard
didn't
Beach.
know. I didn't know what film is. I didn't know who Roland Emmerich was. I didn't know anything really. It was Walter Lindenlaub who got me there. And there I was, and they just started a new sequence, which was the alien sequence in Area 51 in a movie.
They shot it on stage?
They shot it on stage, and I,
You did your job?
I did. I immediately got on with Roland very
Yeah.
well. We did like all Steadicam stuff and whatever. It was like Roland was really great. I mean, and after the 10 day, actually Walter didn't come back for a while. I think I shot about 10 days of first unit, and then they kept me on to do an additional unit, which was shooting parallel, and I ended up shooting all this stuff. The flying things when Will Smith, the pilot, and all this being chased by the aliens and stuff. And that was all really great, and it was really cool, and to see how Roland could work in a simple way. By if something didn't need to be in the background, was out of focus, it didn't matter that it wasn't perfect. It was just I really appreciate that he thought like I would. If it doesn't matter, let's shoot it. We don't see it.
Let's not fuss around.
Let's not fuss around. Okay, it's night, so let's put the black in the background, not light it.
He's like that. Yeah, right.
And so we got like that. I think we got on like that.
And also, you come from the same culture, and there's
Yeah.
a bigger
Of course.
understanding.
I mean, we are basically same age, and we
in-
grew up about 100 kilometers apart. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of similarities in a way.
Yeah.
And both film enthusiasts and stuff. So we got very well. And then that meant a year later, I got the call to shoot Godzilla.
Godzilla, and that was a special look too. This dark kind of
Yeah,
That-
Godzilla. I'm very proud of Godzilla. It's still, I think it's one of the best Roland movies. Actually, it's a really good Roland movie because it's a complete, honest popcorn.
Yeah.
And it's very entertaining, and it looks great.
It
I
looks
think,
amazing.
I think it still holds up. It's a real ride, especially. All these taxi things.
Yeah.
The forever ongoing ending, with Godzilla in the city. It's just a real ride.
I was just with Roland at our neighborhood sushi place, Shintaro, and they always project movies, Japanese movies on the walls, and they showed the really, really old Godzilla. We were laughing so hard,
With the guys in rubber suits.
Yeah, and did he ever tell you the story when he had to go to Sony to Japan, and there was this guy who had the Godzilla suit on, who was actually the actor who was in that original Godzilla in the suit playing Godzilla.
No, actually, he didn't tell me that. That's a great story.
It's hilarious. And he came there to the studio just because he wanted to meet Roland. It was hysterical. Yeah. And then you also did The Patriot with
I didn't do the Patriot.
Oh, no,
I
wait.
mean, they do part of the Patriot.
part of it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I couldn't do the Patriot because at first they wanted to have some. Well, they didn't. I didn't get the movie, and I took another film, and then the person they hired didn't want to do it, and then they called me, and then I had to say no because I had my.
What was the other movie you had?
It was a film called Just Visiting, a French director, a remake of a big French
Oh,
French
with
comedy.
Jean Reno,
With
right?
Jean Reno.
Yeah.
And so it was sad because I mean nothing more I would have wanted than do The Patriot.
Yeah, that was
And
a big
out of
great
loyalty to that director, I couldn't leave that movie.
Yeah.
And I
Who
said that
did-
brought loyalty a lot.
Who was the other director? The Just Visiting, you mean?
Just Visiting, yeah.
Who was
right.
directing that?
No, what's his name?
A French guy?
A French guy.
Just Visiting.
Yeah, Just Visiting.
Did you know him from Europe or did you?
No, I actually I got into it through Jean Reno.
Ah. And you met Jean Reno in
Jean Reno
Godzilla?
in Godzilla, yeah. And
Oh.
he,
Jean-Marie Poiret.
Jean-Marie Poiret. Exactly.
So you met him through Jean. I liked Jean Reno. He's a cool.
Yeah, he was really
he
great.
was so awesome.
He was really great. Yeah, so I met them here in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Jean-Marie was here and with Jean Reno. And Jean Reno wanted me to introduce me to him.
Mhm.
And so that's
Did
when
you
I
speak
got
French
that
with
job.
them?
No, I pretended not to speak French. I learned that early on. With the French, pretend not to, if you start to speak French,
Oh yeah,
They-
forget. Then
they-
they're like, and you go.
and they feel like you're an idiot because you don't speak.
and they
speak it.
correct you if you make
yeah.
one mistake. Whereas a
Exactly.
Spanish person would say, if you say just si, they would say,
Yeah.
you speak great Spanish. I know.
So no, through the whole movie.
Sorry,
They
French
didn't really know that I spoke French, that I understood every word that they were saying. So I heard of.
That's the
things.
best.
It was very good, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when did you do? I remember, because in the meantime we became good friends, and I would visit you on set. I remember when you did Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Was it right?
Yeah.
Was that the second one?
Second one, yes.
Second one, and we went to that warm-up party, and we walked in, and there was like Mike Myers.
Right.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, that was actually another great experience.
That was. Did you guys just laugh your asses off on set? Because it must. I mean, how can you keep a straight face when you're shooting that? I wonder.
Well, comedies are not so easy.
I know, but
it's, sometimes it got actually quite tedious. But yes, we did. We actually did laugh a lot because Mike Myers needed to have a happy set
An
for
upbeat
himself,
vibe, kind of,
because he
yeah.
was on a lot of sugar. He was like
really,
Coca-Cola and everything. That sugar.
sugar high.
Yeah, sugar high.
Mm.
And it was really cool on the set. I mean, because he's not an easy guy. He wasn't an easy guy to his people, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But when we, I mean, every morning, he would always sing an Ueli Steiger song. an
Oh yeah,
Ueli Steiger
that's where
song.
this came from.
Yeah, right.
Dum da da dum da da dum da 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 da. Oh, Ueli Steiger.
Correct. Correct. He as well gave me, as a present, he gave me a karaoke machine.
He did.
As a rap gift.
Oh, we should do a karaoke night at your house.
Yeah, we should.
I like it. I remember when I came to the set and you shot the scene with Elizabeth Hurley as the fembot, and she had this hot lingerie outfit on, and all your camera guys were like salivating. And then you said, Andrea, meet Elizabeth. She's going to St. Moritz, and don't you know it really well? And the guys are like, fuck you. We're around here every day, and you show up and you just talk to her. And I'm like, you didn't live in St. Moritz. No, sorry. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly.
It was funny. It was funny.
No, that was another crazy shoot. Good. I mean, it was but very long hours. That was sometimes very tiring.
But also, if you think about it, like you did these big movies, and then these cult movies. So you have these kind of really, and now these comedies, because
Yeah.
Soap Dish, Austin Powers, and then also Bowfinger.
Bowfinger, yeah. Of course.
Bowfinger's
Yeah.
did. By the way, Bowfinger did. Steve Martin write that, or
He wrote it.
He wrote it.
He
right?
wrote it as well. Yeah,
It was so
he wrote
funny.
it. It's very funny.
I love that.
And Frank
movie.
Oz directed it. I mean, it was like an incredible group of people. And then Eddie Murphy is just so talented. He's
Yeah.
difficult, but very I mean, whenever the camera is running, he was like just unbelievable. I mean, you really realize,
Yeah.
you know, he has this gift and this absolute fast mouth. You know, he can eyes so fast. You know, and it's very smart.
But I find every comedian is very intelligent. Like comedy
have to be,
requires a
yeah.
lot of wit and
Yes.
fast, like
Yeah.
witted
You
intelligence.
have to be fast.
Yeah.
And Eddie for sure was that.
And Steve Martin too, though, in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, he has this particular way of being funny, which kind of works for me.
And
really
Steve Martin, of course, is sane, whereas Eddie Murphy is probably not so sane.
Really?
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. But you know.
Or let's say
and
grown
Eddie,
up.
And Steve Martin handled that very well. You know, all the perks and things that Eddie had. Yeah, it was actually quite amazing, you know, because Eddie would only come out of the trailer if all the other actors were standing on their marks.
No.
You know, then he went into touch-ups. So all the actors had to be on set standing there while he, you know, maybe arrive in 5, maybe in 20. So, yeah.
Wow.
It was quite something. I mean, there's a lot of...
Are these
It was
people, like
crazy.
these Eddie Murphys or people who do that, aware that what they're doing to the other people? Like, is there a consciousness around, like, I'm having all these people wait? I don't know.
Yeah, well...
I cannot...
You know, it's a different world. I mean, as Martin Lawrence was like that, of course, as well. He learned from Eddie and then added, you know, doubled it up.
Really?
I did another comedy with him.
Which one was that?
That was
Oh, I remember.
the Castle movie, Black Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never
that was
came,
a fun movie.
I never came to visit you on that.
No, we've shot that in North Carolina.
Oh.
I did a few films in North Carolina, because before the tax rebates, you know, the producers went to places like North Carolina because they were right to work states, which means they could hire non-union people and not pay their fringes. So that was a way to save money. Anything to save a buck. Yeah, so
It's a business after all.
it sure is.
But you did another comedy that I remember. We had dinner with these producers before I even knew what it was, and it was Tom Green.
Oh yeah. Oh God. That was one of the last movies I actually shot in Los Angeles. That was before 10,000 BC, I think.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what it was called. Stealing Harvard.
But it had a different working title.
It was called.
It had a better working. I like the working title better.
They didn't get the rights to it. It was no. It was
I
it
don't
called
remember
Stealing
it
Harvard.
either.
Is it still called?
Yeah,
Wasn't it
officially
Stealing
it's
Harvard?
called Stealing Harvard, but it had a different name. Anyway.
It then had a different name, I think.
But there was a funny thing about it with the casserole.
I mean, it was actually a very funny movie, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really
It didn't work, right? Like
go anywhere,
yeah.
you know.
Why is that? Do you
I don't know. You never know with films,
Yeah.
you know, whether they, you know, catch on or not. It was
Yeah.
a film that didn't make any money.
But then 10,000 BC was something completely different because
Very different.
yeah,
you know,
so
that was
it's another
the-
like bombastic.
It was after
like,
the
big-
Patriot. I mean, I spent quite a lot of time on the Patriot still as well, because I came back and did.
Who was the
second
DP?
unit.
What was it? Deschanel?
It was Caleb.
Yeah, Caleb
Deschanel
Deschanel.
was the DP then finally, and then when I finished that other movie, that
The French one.
the French one, I got a call from the second unit director, Peter Winter. He had a problem and he wanted me to take over and second unit. So I ended up actually shooting second unit. It was there a lot. I did quite a lot. Did a lot of work on that one.
And then that kind of resulted in you shooting 10,000 BC with Roland.
Yeah, I mean, after that 10,000 VCC I would do, yeah. You know, I mean, with Patriot, that was a bit unfortunate. I really would have loved to do the whole movie, but
Yeah.
there you go. And It was actually interesting to go back there as a second unit. Second unit is great because you're the happy unit. And the first unit
Yeah.
was the not happy unit.
And not so much stress.
I mean,
because you're kind of
I
autonomous.
don't want to tell
right?
too many stories. It's too personal.
No, we don't want to go
We
there.
don't want to go there. But it was actually, I had a really good time. I had my whole crew there. My whole family was there. I had it with Peter Winter. I had such a great time to do
Yeah.
second unit.
Uh-huh.
We did a lot of great things, and it was just fun. And then sometimes I was with first unit just as an operator, which I love to do too. It was just, it was I mean, The Patriot's a really good movie. You know,
Yeah,
it's a really really good movie, and Mel Gibson was great, and I shot a lot of kind of bit with Mel Gibson as well. He was great,
And
He
Heath
was
Ledger too.
with Heath Ledger as well. You know, he was of course,
Incredible.
incredible. It was and Thomas was a makeup artist
I know.
on it as well. So we had we would rap, and then I would cook, and then Thomas came back when we were ready. All the camera crew, we already had a beer and cooking, and
Nice.
he as a makeup artist has a huge makeup department. It's difficult film
so
for makeup.
they're always the
And
first to come.
he's the
and
first to
last
go,
leave.
the
Yeah.
last to come.
I would never go into makeup for that reason. But was 10,000 BC right after that? Or was it
It was a
the
year
day
after
after
that.
tomorrow was after, right?
No, the day after tomorrow was after that.
Yeah.
Then
But
was the day
10,000
after
BC
tomorrow.
was like
Was
a
later,
difficult
so-
was a difficult shoot, right?
That was a very
Because of
physically very
weather
difficult
and all of
shoot,
that
yeah.
and
I mean-
other circumstances.
Yeah, that was a very difficult. But before we did 10,000, the day after tomorrow, which was the first time I actually went, with a big movie like that to Canada. I had a new gaffer. I couldn't take my gaffer Jim Gert, who I worked with for more than 10 years, and that was for me personally was actually really difficult. To when you work with somebody
Yeah.
so close who is a real collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually I remember I went to Canada quite early on. I asked around what kind of gaffers are there, and there was
That was Montreal, right?
that was Montreal.
Mhm.
And then I heard this name, Jean Fortier. Jean Fortier, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? I'm so terrible. Jean,
Okay,
anyway.
we all have
And
it.
so I went there very early on, met him, and made sure that he was, because he was.
But nowadays the
able to
crews
do it.
in Montreal are pretty good.
They're very good, but I mean, it's not about, you have to meet somebody who you get on.
You click with. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
mean, like somebody,
sure.
you don't want to be sabotaged.
No.
No, so I was very fortunate, with Jean and as well with the key grip. It was like I had a really good crew in the end. I brought, of course, my focus puller. Joe was there.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Camp was there, Steadicam operator, and Scott Strinen, my dolly grip and crane grip, who I worked probably more movies than anybody else with. I would take him all around the world because
Really?
dolly grip is so important.
Uh-huh.
Very underestimated
Mhm.
normally.
Why is that?
I don't know, because it's a below the line job. It's only a dolly pusher.
Uh-huh.
The dolly grip is as important as a camera operator, because a good dolly grip has exactly the feel of has taste, knows when to push, has a rhythm, knows the emotion of a shot. And then Scott was a lot more.
Mhm.
He was a light on the set. People liked him. He could move actors around out of the way without them being
Right.
offended, because he was just a very
Smooth.
and sexy guy.
Yeah.
I mean, like in a good way. I
With
mean,
his
it was like-
voice.
yeah, and he's Scott is just a wonderful person as well. But
Yeah.
he's has an incredible rhythm, and he became the number one crane guy as well, techno crane guy. Still the best I've ever worked with.
See, even like in any position, even only in the camera department, there's so many finesses to each of the jobs that are beyond what you would like physically explain. Like, oh, this is what I'm doing. What you
Yeah,
ju-
no,
how
of
you
course.
just
I mean,
described
example,
Scott.
dolly grip, Scott.
Yeah.
So I did a film in Brazil. It was a very small film. After I didn't do 2012, that's where I sort of a film with Roland that I didn't do, and that instead did a film with my old friend Aloysio Abranches in Rio de Janeiro. That was a small movie, but I brought Scott with me and Reed Russell, who was then a younger Steadicam operator. He was the follow-up after Gary Camp in my crew. And, I let him be the operator. And Scott would, in a small film like that, you have
You wear
he
many
is
hats.
great because he's with the camera all the time. He's always there, and he is with extras. And he takes action, he moves extra in front of the camera to make foreground vibes. He does he's a filmmaker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He's not just doing.
And
he's not
you
just,
could not do that with
Yeah.
anybody that is just a dolly pusher.
Right.
You always have to, in film jobs, I think, if you want to be good, you have to be incredibly over,
Beyond your
Yeah,
tasks,
I mean,
kind of.
what's the word? The word is over. There's a word for it. Which
That
escapes
word.
me. That word.
I know over
Yeah.
fill in the blank. Yeah.
Well,
I know what you mean.
now
I understand.
a key grip has to be an engineer.
Yeah,
The gaffer has to be a lot more
Yeah.
than just an electrician.
of course.
And all
They
my
also
crew,
have
they
to
were-
have a vision and kind of that
they're all
collaborating.
filmmakers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And they have to be able to
Fit in.
fit in and deal with people.
And
with
also
crew,
kind of
guide crew.
mini decisions, like you
Oh
said.
yeah,
Because you say
They
the
admit-
director makes the big decisions, but even you within your team make the decisions,
Yeah,
but then
sure.
they have to also,
sure.
yeah. Trickles
Sometimes
down.
sometimes we have to manipulate the directors into doing the right thing.
Right.
Well, right, yeah. As a DP,
So-
you have to be a good manipulator and salesperson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you guys were doing 10,000 BC, that was interesting to go to Namibia and South Africa and New Zealand, right?
Yeah, that was
Wait, you told
extraordinary.
me it was difficult. You told me a story once where you couldn't get on a flight. That was quite interesting. What was the remind
A lot
me.
of things happen on
Remind
that
me
movie.
what
a
happened
lot
there.
of things.
You had
A lot
this
of
little
things.
contact from a little guy you met on Austin Powers or something.
Yeah, right. Actually, yeah. On the Bill Branson,
Richard
Richard
Branson.
Branson.
He had a cameo in Austin
He had
Powers.
a cameo in Austin Powers.
That's
And
where you
Joe
guys met
Sanchez got on with him very well
Uh-huh.
with Richard, and they talked a lot. But anyway, yeah, on 10,000 BC, a lot of production problems we had. We had there was a major picture we did, $200 million plus movie, and the line producer, the local producer had only done commercials, and
Yeah.
the people in the office were just hopelessly in over their head.
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
And then we were actually shooting in South Africa, in Cape Town. But then, long story, we moved to New Zealand for the whole sequence of the mammoth hunting sequence. Already we had the sets and everything were being built in the Drakensberg area in South Africa, a whole, the whole area was prepping for a crew of 800 people to live there. People were renovating their guest houses. Streets were built into, it's it kept raining and raining there and whatever. The sets were being built. And then the decision came that we move out of South Africa. So everything, all the sets had to be put in a big 747 freight plane. All the costumes, all the, that. It was a big deal because there's a lot of live stuff, real leather and whatever. And in New Zealand, you can't bring anything in like that. So we had to have it was complex.
Uh-huh.
And the whole crew, we treated New Zealand basically as a location. The whole South American crew was was flown, came with me, my camera crew, everybody.
South Africa.
Like camera gears out of South Africa. Most of it would come from South Africa to New Zealand, and so they chartered a plane for us, and it was sort of just before Easter, I think. And anyway, all of a sudden we're very silent because they said, you have it's a great plane, and you don't know, it's all business class and whatnot, and it's all wonderful, and silence from the office. Came out, they booked the plane on the wrong day, a day late, and that would have meant the whole crew would
that
be
costs a lot of money.
Would be in overtime, and it was Easter, so it was like double time and whatever. And with an airplane, when you book it, you pay it. They paid like I think $700,000 for that flight, and then it was Easter, so there was no planes, couldn't be found.
Yeah.
And that's when Joe Sanchez actually called Richard Branson.
Seriously?
Yeah,
He
seriously.
Just said, hey, Richard,
yeah, he
your
did
buddy
actually.
Joe.
But it didn't. I mean, Richard Branson said like, you should Virgin. We should basically call Virgin, and.
But he hooked it up.
Hmm?
Did he hook it up?
No, he didn't hook it up, but he tried. It was so funny story though.
But that's nice.
But in the end, we
He
had
tried.
we had a Spanish plane that was not made to fly for so long, and it was like falling apart, and he was like,
oh my God.
unbelievable, the most unbelievable flight
Weren't
I've
you
ever taken.
scared to get on it?
We went from South Africa, we stopped over in Mauritius, and then from Mauritius went to Perth, and then from Perth to, they flew in another crew in Mauritius because, the crew had to come from Spain before, so they couldn't, I mean, it was an
insane.
absolute nightmare. I mean, it had like, still ashes in the ashtrays in that plane. I mean, literally, the seats were, I mean, this was like the trashiest plane I've ever seen. The first AD sat in front of me. He put on his seat belt, and boom, and he had the whole seat belt in his hands. My armrest was put together with gaffer tape.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was really, I mean,
I
it
would
was
have never
that
stayed on
bad.
that
Halfway through, they ran out of food. Well, because the second amount of food, it was already, it was becoming alcoholic. It went off. They ran out of drinks. Then in the back were all the extras, so they gave him a glass of wine, but then that was it, and then they didn't get anything to drink anymore. We were in sort of the front part. We were in a little bit better thing, so at least we could get
That's terrible.
glass of
What
wine.
happened to that plane the next day? That fabulous business class plane, right? Oh
No.
my God.
Anyway, that happens if you have a travel coordinator who
Doesn't know what they're doing.
was working a day before, still in a travel agency in Cape Town.
Yeah, so it's kind of like these guys who were like working as an electrician and then called themselves gaffer.
Yeah, right.
But that's like what it is here in LA. I feel like sometimes when I call a specialist coming from Germany, where an electrician really learned for 3 years as an apprentice, here you have to stand in front of Home Depot for 2 minutes and you call yourself an electrician, kind of.
That's very true.
I mean, is that a bad thing to say?
No, it's not a bad thing to say. It's actually the truth. You hire. Just today I had a conversation with my neighbor. He has some work done because he had some water damage. It's the same thing that we had when we did an addition on our house. You have a great contractor, and then he sends people. Then the plumber is coming, and the next day the tile guy is coming. Oops, and he has a different hat on, but it's the same guy. And, yeah, and then they just change the hat.
Then he puts a little moustache on
exactly.
the next day and
Right,
a wig so you don't recognize him. And all of a sudden he's a painter.
Yeah, right. And he is an electrician too. So.
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
Anyway, that is actually quite funny. Sorry, but it does really happen here a little bit like that.
I know. That's why I mention it. Yeah, but we come from. That's why you ordering your windows from Switzerland, so they're solid.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, I didn't do that, but a friend of us did that. He actually had the windows built in Switzerland and flown here and then flew in two guys who actually put them in, installed it within a day. They installed 20 windows. One of them, huge, like 10 feet by 6 feet, huge. I mean,
Do you think, do you have any, so it sounded like when I listened to your whole trajectory in your career, you were very lucky. You were very bold also. Would you say that? Like saying like, "Oh, I just made these decisions when I worked with Dennis Hopper." Were there any times where you felt like it's a crisis or where you want to throw the towel or something like that?
Not really.
Not
I mean,
really,
not really. I mean, sometimes it was sometimes I didn't want to get up in the morning, you know. That, I mean, to work on a movie is very, very hard.
Yeah.
And the films I did with Roland were like very taxing because, not all of them, but I mean, Day After Tomorrow is a lot of work, was 2 years of my life. And then 10,000 BC was at 2.5 years with everything. And it was just very taxing. It's, you know, you're during the shoot, it's a lot of work and intense, and you never have off, and you forget about on every movie you forget about your life, you know. It's like you're just
You're in a
there.
bubble.
You're in a bubble, you're there. And you know, as my agent Sandra Marsh once told me, you know, you have to be careful with this. You only have so many in you. And she was very right. You actually only have so many in you, in a way.
So be careful with your choices.
Yeah, be careful with your choices. And
Are you happy with all your choices?
I feel incredibly fortunate.
I
Yes,
feel you have
Yeah.
left like a legacy as a cinematographer.
I'm really fortunate that I could have actually start to work internationally like I did. You know, after I finished working with Roland, that first film in Rio really opened up a new world. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, you know. And through that, through people that I met there, I got another film in.
But you mean
in
in
Rio.
ways to see how filmmaking is done in other countries
and just
and
working
other
with
cultures, people
It's
from
all
other
about
culture.
people.
Yeah,
It's
of
not
course.
even whether the film is good or not in the end, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you want,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course, to be, but it's about, you know, working, finding new people. And and that film brought me to Brazil, and I ended up for many years to be in Brazil and work in Brazil and have ending up with my
Little
own,
company.
company in Brazil. But as well, I then at the same time, met a German director here through, funny, through a flying Lufthansa from to Los Angeles, sitting next to a young guy that is in the camera department of UCLA, studying at UCLA. And we sort of got friends. He came by, and then years later, he becomes a producer. And then whenever he comes to LA, he comes by and we cook together,
Who is that?
Mark Pop. His name is Mark Pop. I don't know whether you ever met him. I met him before you came here. And then, one year he comes, he comes here and, come for dinner. And he brings, he's on scouting. He's with somebody else, which was Quirin Berg. Producer, German producer. I didn't know him. And they're on their way to scout in somewhere, And so 4 weeks later, he said, like, this movie, we're doing this movie. It's a German movie. The director is actually in Los Angeles. Could I ask you, would you even,
Meet with him?
do something like that? And I said, well, sure, why not?
See, I think people get intimidated once you've made these huge projects.
Yeah, right.
Because they don't know you, but you always have to ask. It's a good
right.
thing to take away.
Of course.
You just have to be prepared and
you have
not
to
be
ask.
disappointed. Yeah, you have to ask.
Yeah, you have to ask.
And I find that is always in life.
Yeah.
Like if you want something, you need to ask.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to you like that.
No.
You have to actually go there where it can come to you.
Yeah.
It's like the white swan needs a place to go. Yeah, I mean, it's so, yeah. So
And you ended
I
up
said,
doing
yes,
it.
I always like to meet directors. And he was a young director. It was his first movie. He was he's an editor, but he's married to a director, which was Katja von Garnier. And so I met him. This was Marcus Goller. And I ended up doing this film. It was a film called Friendship. It became that was 2002, 10, 11, 10.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it became actually, yeah. And it was a film that became very, very successful in Germany. It was actually the most successful German film from 2010. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so, then I had my friend uh,
Andrea.
Andrea Sixt, where she had another project she wrote and she wanted me to shoot it, and I already met a woman director for that project in Munich, and that didn't work out. And I said, look, I just worked with this young director. He's really great. And so they met up, and it ended up.
He directed
He directed
Ganz heiße Nummer.
Ganz heiße Nummer, yeah. So that was the second movie
German
Marcus
movie,
did,
Ganz
and
heiß.
it became kind of a family film because Thomas was on it as well,
Uh-huh.
and so on. It became a really funny comedy, and again, incredibly successful in Bavaria mainly.
You're kind of the king of the successful comedy.
Yeah, I don't know
really.
how that happened. Now I come to think of it. Yeah, and it really put Marcus Goller on the map.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing all his movies except the last one where I was on another thing that couldn't do it. I did 6 movies with Marcus, and that's what I mean. It's so great to work with people you like.
Where it
I
feels
mean,
good,
Marcus
yeah.
is like just ein schöner Mensch
Yeah.
in the whole romantic. I mean, he's like a
Yeah.
good person.
Good
And
people.
good,
Yeah.
good person, and
Yeah.
he's very great. I mean, I hate to say the word talented. He's more than that. He's good at what he's doing, and he's a in America we would say, in American you would say a Mensch.
Yeah.
So it's always great to work with Marcus. I mean,
and
if anything,
that's
with
how
him, I
you
would
make your
still,
choices too. But like you said earlier, it doesn't matter really the movie, it's the people.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
some
of
of
course
the
the movie
movies
too,
I done
but
with Marcus were not so successful, and some of them were. Who cares? They were all actually all movies I'm quite proud of.
but it's also
As well, it got me to work with Marco Kreuzpeitner, who was another,
yeah.
who I met through Roz.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with
But
him
it's
I had a
also
really
the
great
choice
time too.
because like you said, you're in the bubble and you spend so much time working. That's your life while you were
Yeah,
shooting.
it really is the
That
life.
therefore it's so important, and
Yeah.
and that's why it doesn't matter if it's a big fucking Hollywood
But that's
movie
why,
or a small
yeah,
film,
that's
because
why early on,
the
actually,
quality of life
the
you
quality of
wanna
life is.
have,
I was
like, the
very
life
aware of
goals.
that
Mhm.
from the beginning.
Mhm.
That's why I always had, and I was very fortunate. I always chose well the
Mhm.
people who work with me. I was very fortunate that it actually nearly always worked out really well, and it's your life. It's your lifetime. You're fully in there, So yeah, and now I start to enjoy as well. You always have time in between a movie a little bit. I mean, in my beginning of my career, there was one thing after the other,
Uh-huh.
and then I had a bit more, sometimes a bit time in between. There was actually a time when I even did some commercials. I never hardly did any commercials.
Afrojack.
Afrojack exactly did that too. I
Oh wait, did you
I-
go to Bollywood once too?
I did go to Bollywood. I was on a Bollywood movie, and that's one of the few movies I actually left. I quit.
You
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Before they started.
So they
before started
found you
shooting.
here,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, he was Shah Rukh Khan, and they wanted to make a sort of a crossover movie.
Uh-huh.
He just had done a film before that was relatively successful.
He's a huge movie star
He's
in
a huge
India,
movie star.
right?
He's in
Why did you
Bollywood.
quit? It was just not your thing.
Well, it
Did
it-
the people
no,
not
it was,
like kind of fit the
It was
bill?
it really that film developed into something weird. I never knew really what I mean. It was we prepped a very expensive visual effects movie, superhero movie
Uh-huh.
in Miami, and never could find out what really the budget was.
Mhm. So it was not transparent.
It was completely untransparent, very Indian.
Yeah.
So, and I knew that you had to be careful. And then, it was a union film, but of course, then all of a sudden it was not, and everything was very fishy. And but big, when we had already Miami, downtown Miami closed down for like 3 full weekends. I mean, huge. and yeah, and then I came a hiatus, and then I just knew this was like really weird. I was in, of course, we were shooting as well in Mumbai. So I was in Mumbai, and Shah Rukh Khan has this visual effects shop there, and they wanted me some. They just did a movie where they did a lot of visual effects that didn't look very good, and I was asked to. It was great. I mean, I had a good time there, but
But you had a
thought,
bad
oh
feeling
my
about
God,
it.
yeah. Oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Oh.
And I know how Bollywood works, but there it was like, and our film was not really a Bollywood film. It was a mixture, because it was a Bollywood movie, but had all these Western standards in a way.
Because they wanted to cross over to
Yeah,
Hollywood.
they wanted to cross over. We had a lot of, good Hollywood people. We had a stunt coordinator, a fight coordinator. We had a very good production designer, all Hollywood, I mean, Los Angeles. And the director was actually as well very nice. I liked the director a lot. And Shah Rukh Khan was, interesting. And he was, I spent some time with him, and it was like, he's but he's a god. He was even more than Robert Redford. I mean, he's a god. There.
Locally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a
Well, locally means gazillions of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there are, temples for him.
No way.
Yes, yeah, right. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was him on the top floor of his house, and we were sort of leaning over there, looking down into the sea, and there was these people down there in the street, and they started to turn and saw him. It's
Yeah.
him, it's him.
They
And
were bowing.
people could come running. It's like just because they saw him on the balcony there. I mean, it was just
Weird.
Anyway. But it was funny. Then this kind of fell through in this Miami deal. Shah Rukh Khan called me and said, like, yeah, the line producer that we had here, the production company was called Hollywood Bollywood Productions in New Jersey.
Ooh.
It says about everything.
Oh, yeah.
Now, so Shah Rukh basically wanted to fire that guy, but they don't fire people. So he just said, like, look, I want to shoot this not in Miami. Let's go to either Kuala Lumpur or Rio de Janeiro or London. They love me in London. Okay. And that's when I said, I have to get out of it. By now I was already
Weird.
2 months more than I.
Was it hard to quit? Well, how did you do it?
I just told my agent I need to get out.
That's
But
good
then-
that's what the agents are
Great
really
thing about
great
agents,
for.
but then I basically had to switch off the phone because I called a lot, and then Shah Rukh Khan called me many times, which is yeah, it's kind of great. Shah Rukh Khan is coming for other people. That would be like but it was. Yeah.
Did you build a temple for him?
It was a very interesting experience, but it was it's one of the only times I actually got out, and I got out in time. I mean, the film was made later. They actually did shoot it in London for very little money. In a way, I mean, like the Indian way, they steal everything. They don't have permits, they don't hire people with insurance, they do bring everything. Everybody is excuse me, everybody is brought in without work permits. They just steal every shot.
Yeah.
That's how they do it, and it works very well.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, the Bollywood movie making is as good as American movie making. They started the same time, completely parallel universe, a different way. The Hollywood, they don't have what we have. They don't have a first assistant director as we have. They don't have a costume designer that we have. They have they don't have a script. They have each actor has its own costume designer. The production designer, each set has its own. It's like
a different structure.
It's just very different structure. They don't have a script like we have. Normally the crew doesn't get a script. Then they start shooting, and they shoot for for 10 days without a break, and then they have to rewrite, then they send everybody away for a month, and then, instead of 3 months, you could be on a film like a year.
It's so weird.
It's just a very different way because people cost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Right.
expensive is the actors, the above the line,
Mm-hmm.
and the gear. Everything else is basically free, so people don't count.
Mm-hmm. So that so much about your little Bollywood experience.
Exactly. That's
I
my
forgot a
Bollywood
movie. Remember Rockstar?
Oh yeah, that's actually weird. I mean, that film comes up lately a lot.
Does it? Wow.
Yeah, I don't know because I see pictures of it. Mark Wahlberg. I saw a photo again with Mark Wahlberg where he's actually from that movie, and it's that's a film. I'm actually again very proud of that movie because I think it's a really really cool, good movie. Mark Wahlberg is so good. He's so as a rock star. I mean, he even believes that he's a rock star. He sings, of course, he lip syncs, but I think he believed he sang himself. And he's so good. And Jennifer Aniston. I mean, it's a really lovely, film. And it wasn't very successful. I don't know why. It didn't make so much money, but a lot of
I
people have
watched
seen
it,
it. A
but I
lot of
don't
people have
even
seen it.
remember much. It's not like a movie that kind of made an impression like
Yeah.
me. But I remember I visited you when you were shooting at the sports arena downtown.
Oh, right, that was
Big concert, and we
big.
were like hiding in the sides and stuff.
Yeah, that was
And we all only came because we knew that Jennifer Aniston was going to come with Brad Pitt,
and she did.
and she did.
Yep.
And
That was
Mark
Hollywood.
Wahlberg was barbecuing in the back
Yeah,
for
yeah,
us
right.
at the end. He was very nice.
Yeah, he threw me his car key. Jim Gertchen, me, my gaffer,
Get
threw
some-
me his car key.
get some
Go and
ribs."
have a. And so we in like South Central in his. He just had this Rolls Royce convertible, an Azure, or I think the 350,000, now 500, $500,000 car, and so we were driving, sort of around, did a round
In South
sort of- in
Central.
South Central, and all of a sudden Jim said like, "Hello, officer. We're just taking around here, officer. What's up, officer?" I mean, we sort of thought maybe we should go back to the base camp.
Oh my God.
I
Yeah,
Yeah, that's very funny.
the little things you kind of live through
Yeah, it's
on a movie set.
it was cool.
Wow, wow,
Yeah, that's Hollywood for you.
wow, amazing. What advice would you give like a person who is like wants to get into cinematography now, where the world is a different one than when you entered?
Yeah, it's actually difficult. Well, I think the one thing you have the passion, and you have to have the passion to want to tell stories with the camera, and the passion to work with people, meaning that you as well actively get together with people that think like you and have, that's
And
why
are in the field.
are in the field. I mean, that's why I actually always tell people film school is actually a good thing. Yeah, because you
you
might
have your
meet
peers
people,
there
you might meet
concentrated.
peers which
Yeah.
who you could then grow with. The other thing is, of course, the other thing I always say in a way, now that everybody who buys himself a camera can say they're a DP, a cinematographer, a director of photography, whatever, everybody owns their own gear and everything got very unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a lot better to be a PA because the high professional crews do exist.
And they still work the old school
They still
way.
well, yeah.
with
You
the
have to know,
hierarchy.
yeah. And one way is to move yourself up in the camera department. And I always say it's a lot better to be a PA on a good camera crew with a good DP, with a first assistant that takes you on, and if you're good, you're going to be hired again.
Yes.
If you're independent, if you show that you're good, that you're
The multitasker.
yeah, well,
you-
yeah,
you
that you
see
just
and hear
help,
and- yeah.
just a normal, that you're
Yeah.
good. I mean, like for example, when I hired Reed Russell,
Yeah.
that's another story you
Yeah.
have to tell. But I mean, it's a lot better to become in a lowly position part of a good camera department
Yeah.
than being like a head of department on a porn shoot in a valley.
Exactly.
That doesn't get you anywhere, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's actually, there's a
course.
big need for people who shoot porn. Yeah, that there is. And they're, they're good people, but it doesn't get
maybe
you
in the
anywhere.
really bad times when nothing's going on.
Well, it's just an example. It's a lot better to be a lowly person on something than doing your own thing with people that don't have that experience, or you don't get up,
Yeah.
into the high end. You get there if you either work yourself in,
Work your way up.
work your way up and learn how to
Mhm.
do it, and have talent, or you have to have, of course, talent,
Mhm.
or you're lucky out of a film school, you do a film with a small film that then
Dennis
wins
Hopper discovers
wins
you.
Sundance, or
Yeah.
or an Oscar.
Mhm.
Then of course, yeah.
But you've got to put your hours in, that's for sure. And
Yes.
and I find also, like you said,
very
like
tough.
when you have walked in the shoes of the others, and you are, once you're at the top and you have arrived to be the cinematographer, you understand what all of the others are doing, and you
Yeah.
have, and that's why you become a tight kind of team.
Yeah. No, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I learned that I learned a lot at film school. I mean, still things that I learned at film school 300 years ago are
Yeah.
very present.
Yeah.
Still so I I really owe a lot to my camera teacher, for example, at film school, Bill Oxley. He was great, and he was actually at the time he was a clapper loader on big movies. He was this old guy at film school, very anal. But I'm so grateful what I learned from that guy. Yeah, I mean, and then then you move hopefully on with other people.
How did you feel was the transition of like the whole equipment changing over the decades in terms of technology kind of evolving?
Yeah, I mean, it's just
You have to
there's
just go
always
with
a lot
the
of changes.
flow.
It used to be where different film stocks, whatever. Of course you go with the flow. It was a taxing time when high definition came up, and then we had the actors strike, SAG strike, and only after people could. So we lost film within half a year. Film was dead. Everything had to be done electronically, because then it could be SAG. You could hire people who are not SAG. That really
Wait,
killed.
what?
Yeah, SAG-AFTRA.
Okay.
There was two unions, SAG and AFTRA. SAG striked. We had two big strikes that had a lot of impact. The last writer strike, which was like 20 years ago or something, and 30 years, and the strike of the SAG strike, which made all the TV shows go. All the TV shows were shot on film.
But what does that have to do with
It has nothing to do with nothing,
I don't
but
understand it.
with a little thing in the contract that AFTRA was the union for actors that did television could do, and they were they could be still hired. So, and you could hire those people only when they are on electronic, when you
so
on
it
video,
had to be digital.
digital video. So all the TV shows from one
So that
day
had
to the
a
other
lot to do
switched.
with the change.
Well, it
of the-
was sort of the downfall of film. That was when film really went down. And then new cameras, and there came this red camera, which was really killed a lot of the professionalism in a weird way. Before Ariflex then came with the Alexa camera, and that's when the Alexa camera came in. Then I started to actually use digital as well.
Do people
And it
still
doesn't really
shoot on
change
film?
anything.
Does it do like filmmakers exist that are really like nostalgic and shoot on film?
There's actually quite a lot of films. Film has a big renaissance right now.
Yeah.
I mean, half the movies that were at the Oscars were probably shot on film.
Didn't
Again,
Tarantino also shoot
Yeah,
on
yeah.
film? Mm.
I mean, it's we could discuss that technically, but in the end, it doesn't make a big difference. I mean, for me, it does. it doesn't change whether I shoot with film or with, I would love to shoot a film on film again, but I don't
Why?
really see the reason. Because why? Because it's like it's nice. I love the smell of the magazine. It's like it's a different way to work on the set a bit, because it actually costs a lot of money when you let it run, and with digital it costs a lot of money too. But people thinks it's free because so they let the camera run more. Um, the process in itself is actually not very different.
Because
I mean,
you
I
can
treat
create
with
any
my
effect on a digital that you could do.
that's
on
all
film.
post, and in film you can do the same thing. You digitize it, and then the post is all digital anyway. Now, so actually, I think there's less difference. The only thing is that now you can actually, and that's maybe the positive side. You can here we have like 3 cameras going. And you can afford these cameras. They're cheap. I mean, these are photo cameras. They cost
We don't own them.
yeah, but they cost like $1,000 each. Maybe that one is a bit more. That's probably $3,000 with the lens, because the lens itself is. But you could shoot something with a decent quality.
Wait, do you have this huge camera at home, that like dinosaur thing? Not so old.
Yeah.
What? How? That's
It's a movie
really,
cam.
That's really expensive, right?
Yeah, that was about $350,000. Yeah, I mean these cameras were. I mean, there's not very many of them. A Panavision Panaflex camera, there was probably 500 made.
That's interesting.
2,000 film cameras can cover the whole industry. Including all the television. I mean, it's a niche business. People don't realize the movie. I'm talking about the movie business. I don't talk about it now. Web video and all that. The movie business is a very niche business. Very few people work in it.
Yeah.
Compared to,
of course,
any other industry. In the camera departments, a good camera assistant, there's not that many. DPs, yeah. I mean,
but then it's always being fed with new people from film schools and others.
Oh, of course.
So there's a cycle.
Of course, everywhere, because
But you mean the working ones? So
it's just people who work. Some people. A career normally has a span, and then it ends. And as a cinematographer, you never know. You never know when it ends. You could either, you could get injured, or you fall out of. You're not hip anymore. Whatever. It's a lot of things. You're always replaceable. Nothing. You always have to know. In every job, you're always replaceable. Within a second, there's somebody else is there who's as good. Actually, you may be special because but
because of those human relationships.
Human relationships are
and the loyalty and so forth. Yeah.
Right. It's a weird business.
Yeah. But you lecture too, and you lecture for film schools. And stuff.
I do the master.
Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I actually do that. I talk a lot to young people.
Yeah. Because I bet you they're like,
Well, it's good to know.
Admiring
sometimes it's really interesting that you can really have an influence, and I remind that by just you can touch somebody with some, I don't know, words, experience.
But that's the idea of
really
having
nice
you
thing,
here too. Is like, because if somebody knows, there's this kind of master or cinematographer here, I could learn something. So that's for me like the takeaway, because not everybody kind of has the access to that. So it's really nice to kind of inspire people in that way.
I mean, it's interesting. For example, I've done like 3 master classes for the ASC. These are long things, more than a week. And the people who are in there, they're actually all quite advanced. I mean, they pay a lot of money as well, and they come from all over the world. But it's really interesting that you can actually have an impact on these people, very much so. And it's great to sit and at dinner afterwards and so on, and see where they all come from. And it's wonderful to see their enthusiasm and how some of them are like incredibly into it, and it's so great, Yeah. and I like to do that.
And it's also nice when you see them flourish and see their
Yeah.
careers take
Well,
off.
and it reminds me when I was at film school,
Yeah.
you know, that, you know,
That-
probably one of the most important moment in a way that happened, you know, was as well when a big cinematographer was at the film school, and he saw my little film that I did there in, you know, the end of term screening, and I used a lot of filters and did all this crap, you know. And I ended up sitting down in the coffee shop, and next to this guy, this older guy, and we started to talk. He started to talk, and he said, "You did that film that I just saw," and he said some really positive things. That's really great. It was the most interesting thing of all the things I've seen, and so on. And then it was Sven Nykvist,
Wow.
who is, you know, was my, you know, he shot all the films. He just then shot that the names. He shot Schlangenei and all that, all the.
Was he Swedish or what was his?
Yes.
Swedish. But he did.
Ingmar Bergman. He shot
Oh,
all the
Ingmar
Bergman movies.
Bergman,
Thank you.
okay.
And yeah, and
So he was kind of his legend in it.
yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
legend,
yeah.
and we just 5 minutes maybe, and then I asked him Fanny and Alexander, which came out. It was the most beautiful,
Uh-huh.
you know, television kind of thing Bergman did, and with him, and you know, and he just said like, yeah, and you know, you have this. And somehow we came to lenses and said like, you know, I shot this with an ingenieur zoom, and I said like, what, you not primes or no, I shoot everything with an ingenieur zoom, and this is the old ingenieur.
Uh-huh.
And I sort of thought, wow, you know, and that started me off to use zoom lenses, and since then I always use zoom lenses, and I realized it's not about, you know, that the best quality necessarily, or you know, it's what you do with it, you know, and
Yeah. But it's funny how you
and he
can
had an
get.
incredible impact on me. There's a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
You know, I have
Yeah.
experiences in my life too where you feel like in a couple of minutes and it has such an impact on
Yeah.
the rest of your life. Isn't
Right.
that amazing? It's not the big things. It's sometimes it really is like this very impactful, powerful moment. Yeah.
No, it's
awesome.
and that's why I think it's important to actually
Do
you know,
that and
do
pay
that
it
and
forward.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Good on you. And other than that, just cook dinner for your friends.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I really try to do most now.
Yeah, I know. When next?
Well, tomorrow I have a dinner with like 8 people as well.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and some of my old, you know, camera family,
Uh-huh.
and the lead actress from 10,000 BC,
Uh-huh.
Camilla Bell.
Very nice.
Isn't that?
Are you hungry now? Should we kind of
Yeah,
wrap it up and go
I'm
for
hungry
dinner
and
soon?
thirsty.
It's actually 7:30.
All right, it would be
Yeah.
time for a drink.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. It was a great
coming
pleasure,
on the
Andrea.
podcast and the stories you shared, and it's very, very insightful and I'm sure very inspiring to.
I hope so. Great pleasure. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you.